Justin, thank you so much for a few minutes. I appreciate the show, Invincible Fight Girl. I am a wrestling fan. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the show is about a young girl who's trying to follow her dreams of becoming the world's best wrestler. It's kind of infused with my own love of wrestling, anime, and kind of this desire to talk about what it's like, I think, right now to follow something you're passionate about and all the ways that that can be really challenging and really hard, and the ways that that can change you and change your community, but can also be, pretty rewarding.
Yeah, for me, wrestling was always about storytelling and also the pageantry of characters. I think that's why, for me, my favorite character has always been Macho Man, will always be Macho Man, and there will be nobody like the Macho Man persona. I could watch his promos all day. Tell me a little bit about your love for wrestling and where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it came from just being a kid, watching it when I was supposed to be asleep, at nighttime, turning the TV on, and just like every night from school, like that was my routine. Like I would watch that, in between like, Seinfeld reruns and like other sitcoms, and then I just kind of like fell in love with it, and I was also like, I was like a '90s kid, right? So that was kind of like really big with everyone at the time. Like you'd see kids like shouting rock quotes at teachers, which is probably not what you should be doing. They're walking around wearing like Stone Cold Steve Austin shirts. Yeah, it was definitely like the wave of the moment, and it had all of us like in a chokehold.
That same type of characters, I don't think necessarily would fly too well. I mean, it's called the Attitude Era for a reason. I think we turned out okay though.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So much of I can now that I have kids of my own, I can definitely see being like, I maybe wouldn't want them to be walking around telling people to like shut up. It doesn't matter what your name is. But I don't know. For some reason back then, it just felt like our relationship to it was different and it was more fun. And yes, you were walking around saying things you weren't supposed to say, and yes, they were doing stuff that maybe wasn't developmentally appropriate, but I don't know. It just was like it was so great. There was so much that I loved about it.
Now let's talk a little bit about the your show. I love Andy, and I think one of the things I love about her is that her passion, she's able to take that and be really influential around the people around her, which is what I really like. Tell me about developing her and what she means to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andy, I sort of see her in this large metaphor about what it's like to follow your passion as the young generation and the young kid who's always going to be coming up in any sort of, whether it be industry, any sort of like sport, anything where it's already pre-established. You've got these hierarchies. You've got characters like Aunt P who have reached the pinnacle and are sort of telling everyone in the younger generation, hey, it's over, you missed it. And then even with that, there's always going to be the young generation who's like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm gonna do it bigger, I'm gonna do it better. Um, and it's kind of interesting for me, like I'm in my 30s, but I'm already kind of getting to that older person place of like having seen a lot and starting to be like, oh, I think there's a lot that has sort of already been done. And even right now on my heels, there's like young kids entering the animation industry who are like, nope, we're going to do it bigger, we're going to do it better. And so she sort of encapsulates that sort of youthful like hunger and at the same time naivete.
Yeah, and she's great in that aspect. I think that it for me it really showcased kind of like you're saying, that hunger, and it's been fun to watch. I also love the way that you present wrestling in
Thank you.
general. The episode one, right off the bat, when we have our first match, there's a ring that comes from the space, and then there's a robot. Tell me about you developing how you wanted to present wrestling, especially in an anime form.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was trying to sort of capture what it felt like as a kid. Um, the battles just felt so huge and so momentous and so like epic. I always tell the story of like maybe this is telling on myself of like my developmental brain as a kid, but I always thought that like Undertaker was really like a dead guy. And when he would get up, I was like, oh fuck, like he's really coming back. There's nothing you could do to stop him. So for me, that was kind of like the feeling that I wanted these matches to have. I mean, you can tell why like our rings are, many, many, many sizes bigger than actual rings. I wanted them to feel like these crazy clashes of power that are like earth shaking. Um, and as well, like sort of trying to capture this idea of like, well, if an entire world was revolving around wrestling, like what would that mean? And so that's where you get like the satellite like firing down wrestling rings and like how ridiculous that is, but also like how epic it is that like you challenge someone and like a giant laser fires down a ring and you guys just like throw down wherever you are.
Yeah, I think for me it was anytime Kane's flames hit, you
Yeah.
knew you
Yeah.
knew you knew there was going to be trouble. I think as an adult now though, I just allow myself to be immersed
Yeah.
and just to go with it. But yeah, there was a point. I think my heartbreak moment was actually finding out that Kane and the Undertaker weren't actually brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh, all right, that hit harder than a Santa Claus or a Tooth Fairy or anything
Yeah.
else like that."
Yeah.
And I was
My version of that was when I started to get old enough to kind of like watch the news on my own and you would hear about like wrestlers passing away or things happening in their personal lives. And like that was like it was like a really sort of sobering moment of like, oh man, these are like real people. So that was sort of my version of that.
yeah. Also, just very quickly, seeing them sometimes at shows and not really with the presentation was kind of
Sure.
a letdown. I'm not gonna
Right,
lie.
right.
And now, so I also want to talk about the pacing of your show because I love the way, as a fan of wrestling, the way that you showcase the grind, you showcase the way she's learning from others, the way you're showcasing that it's not an easy path to become a wrestler. Everything she's doing, it seems that it's an uphill battle, and for someone who's watched so many wrestling documentaries, it means a lot to me that it's tough for Andy, and but she's gonna her passion, she's gonna make it. You
Yeah.
told me about developing that story.
To me, I think that is sort of the spirit of what I believe in and what it takes to like follow your passion. Um, it's hard, and I think right now it's harder than ever. And I always kind of get bummed out when shows don't reflect that in like as real as they can, just how hard it can be to follow something that you want to do, but maybe you just aren't there at the level yet. And so it felt really important to like have this character who, if she's going to have all this passion, all this hunger, to sort of meet that with some pretty harsh realities of the world. She gets in her first fight and gets her ass kicked for a good portion of it, and then that kind of continues throughout a lot of the fights throughout the series is like she gets no easy wins, and when she does win, it's a result of like strategy, it's a result of her sort of picking her moment, it's a result of like her solving a problem. And so to me that was it was a culmination of a lot of things. It was one, sort of how my own views are on just what it's like to pursue something, but I think it was also trying to be um, as faithful as we could to what wrestling is, which is like it's these fun big battles, but a lot of times there's a story in it, and the wrestlers are doing, very fast. It's like fast chess, but there's problem solving happening. And so to me, it was like that was sort of what was important about trying to find our version of that was like I didn't want it to just be throwing out moves that audiences would just be like, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, oh, it's that. Um, I wanted it to feel like each match was a problem to be solved, and like it was a puzzle to figure out.